Yeah, there we are. Okay, so like I mentioned at the beginning, I have two windows set up. One has been set up as a student and one has been set up as a teacher. My teacher window is in blue and my student window is in red, just for reference. Get rid of that. Previous assignment I was just doing some testing for. So we're going to start out on the teacher side and go through the steps for creating the assignment. Then we're going to go ahead and open up Cami from the student side and show you what they see. And then we'll cover turning in the assignment, the grading integration, and split and merge. And I'll try to field any questions that you guys have as well along the way. And hopefully we'll have some time at the end for Q&A, but I know we've already got a late start. So yeah, we'll press on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So we want to go to add assignment as we would normally do. And we want to make sure that we have the Cami Chrome extension installed. And for those of you who are following along with this, if you are wanting to follow these steps, I'm just going to pop in the chat the extension link just to make sure that you have that already. I don't know if this has been force installed or not, but
hey, Aiden, can we get rid of that message you have there on the front? It says this meeting is being recorded. If you click got it, that will go away.
That's not showing up on my screen. I think you have to click got it from memory when somebody else records.
Yes, each person has to click got it.
It's like asking for your consent to be recorded. That's all. Yeah, that's all right. That's quite all right. So we're going to go ahead and give this a name. So I'll just call this Cami assignment because I am the soul of originality. And when you have the extension installed, you're going to have this assign from app option for Cami showing up. So when you click this, it's going to ask you, first time you do this, it's going to ask you whether you want to open your file from Google Drive or OneDrive. I have my resources set up under Google Drive, so I'm going to select my file from there. Now, if this file has already been opened in Cami and you've put annotations onto it, those annotations will carry over to the individual copies that get created for the students, which gives us some options to add in things like instructional material before we push the assignment out. I'll sort of cover how you can do that when we talk through the tools themselves, but just know that this assignment that we're pushing out is going to have some annotations on it to start with. So we'll just give a moment there. It's just going to go ahead and attach that file to the resource. This will be what allows us to generate the individual copies and the turn in button. I'm going to make this an ungraded assignment today, and we'll just go ahead and leave everything else as is and create the assignment. So now that we've created this, we can go ahead and jump over to the student side, and I'll just refresh to update the stream. We can see that that new assignment has been posted. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Now, this is where the students also need to have that Cami Chrome extension installed, because this button here, the Open Assignment with Cami button with the little icon, that will not show up unless the extension is installed, and it is essential that they click that button. If they click this, it will try to redirect them to Schoology's own PDF viewer, which is going to have some limitations. And yeah, it's for best practice. You want to make sure that the students have that installed before they go and open their first assignment. So when we click open, it's going to go ahead and redirect us. You can see here it's going to import the information from Schoology about this assignment. At the top here, we have a little turn in button. So at the end, this is how we can submit the work back to the teacher. And this file lives in the Cami Schoology assignments folder in Google Drive. So this is a folder that will be generated upon the students opening their first assignment, and then all future assignments get put under this folder. So if they need to find it in Drive outside of Schoology, that's where they can locate that. So we're going to talk through the tools on the toolbar here, and we're going to start off by talking about the select tools. The select tools are largely used to edit existing annotations and to move around the page. So to that end, I'm just going to go ahead and put in quickly some highlights on the page and some other annotations that will give us something to edit. So I'll just put some shapes in up at the top here. We'll cover how these tools work in a little bit more detail when we get to them, but for now I just need to have something on the page. So the select tool. If you hover over an individual annotation, that's going to allow you to edit that. So we can change, for example, the color of the highlight. We can copy the text out if we want to put that into a quote later on. We can also create a text comment that is associated with this highlighted text. I'll come back to that in a little bit more detail once we get to the comment section. And yeah, that also allows us to delete individual annotations if you click that trash can icon there. Now, there are other ways to delete annotations. We actually have an eraser tool that has some options for that as well. The hand tool, this one isn't used particularly often unless you have a document which has a really large canvas size. So if the pages are loading and, you know, students are just need to like scroll around, especially horizontal scrolling, that is a case where the hand tool might come into play. Otherwise, it's one of the less frequently used tools. Select annotations. This is like the original select tool I showed you. However, this will allow me to click and drag over multiple annotations and edit those. So for example, these two shapes, I can move them around the page. I can copy and paste them to other parts of the document and, you know, modify other characteristics about these as well. Now, if you're, if you need to move things from one page to another, just note that you will need to copy and paste those, as if you sort of drag them to the end, you can't kind of move them across the page line like that. You will need to copy it, then paste it below. I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this group of annotations, and we'll use this space later on to talk about the text box tool. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into the other tools on the interface. So next we have the dictionary tool and the read aloud. Dictionary tool is pretty straightforward. If we click on a word in the text, it's going to give us the Oxford Dictionary definition of that word. So quite useful if students are going through and doing a reading exercise, particularly close reading on things like source documents. Sometimes if you're reading, you know, like a historical piece, you know, from the late 1700s, something like that. You know, there are some parts of language which have shifted a little bit, but they can easily sort of look up the definition of those words as needed. You can also read aloud the document. So I'll just quickly switch my audio over for this so that you guys can actually hear. See here if I also have to switch this over too. I believe I do. Yep. So I'll just read the first two sentences here just to give you an idea of how this works.
It was in the clove of seasons. Summer was dead, but autumn had not yet been born. That the ivy slid in the bleeding tree. The flower garden was stained with rotting brown magnolia petals, and ironweeds grew rank amid the purple phlox.
So I'm just using the voice packs. So there are a number of voice packs. I'm on a MacBook for reference. So I have a number of Mac OS voices, but I also have some Google voice packs installed. So this would be probably quite similar to what the students would see on their Chromebooks. The Google voice packs are pretty good. I've found some other voice packs can be a little bit robotic with reading the text. These are pretty good at picking up like different words and things that some of the Mac OS voices do struggle with. When you're reading, you can jump back and forth between the sentences. So if you miss something, you can jump back and read it again. You can also select specific text on the page. So for example, if you wanted to read just this sentence, you could click and drag that. And you could also click loop if you wanted to have that text read through several times. It's also possible to just blanket read the page. So if I scroll to the second page here and hit play, it will start reading from the first sentence of that page, and then it will keep reading until it hits the end of the document. Same goes if you click on any word in the text, it will then start reading from that word onwards until it hits the end of the page. And lastly, you can dial up and down the speed at which that reads as well. So you can make that faster or slower based on preference. Moving on to the markup tools. So under the markup heading, we've got a few different options. These first three really just relate to the the highlighter. So they are all just variations on the highlighter tool. The first is the text highlighter, the one that I showed you briefly before. Basically, click and drag over some text on the page. The strike through and underline, just for reference, they work in the exact same way as the text highlighter, but they will annotate the text differently. So, each of these can be set with their own default color option as well. So you can set that from the color palette. There is a color picker here as well. The main difference between these other types of the highlighter here are freehand. So if you have a, if you're using a touchscreen and stylus, you can use the freehand highlighter as a way to, use the stylus a bit more like a highlighter pen. The box highlighter is useful if you've got things that are non-text elements that you're wanting to highlight. So for example, if you've got something that you've drawn like this, you can highlight over that by using the box highlighter. Moving on to the comment tools next. So the comment tools, there are, again, quite a few options. So we have text comments, voice comments, video comments, and screen capture comments. So these can be used not only for the students to submit work to you guys for later grading, you can actually use these comments to submit your own instructional pieces onto the resource as well. So in this case here, we've added a number of voice comments and video comments as the teacher. Because we've added them to the template file, the individual copies are all going to have these annotations as well. So as a student, I can click play and watch that video back and see what the teacher has to say about this exercise. So just generally speaking, comments can be generated either by hovering over something you've marked up that will allow you to generate just a text comment. And then we can have that comment be associated with the page. So if we have a note that we're wanting to take on this section here, we can press that. And then if I hover over that text, it's going to show me the comment associated. If I hover over the comment, it's going to show me what is associated with it on the page. You can write replies to your own comments. So you can have a follow-on thought. And you can also click back into your comments, and you can edit those as well. So I've got the option to anchor these. So we can anchor these to the page. We can also, if we haven't already highlighted a piece of text, we can click and drag over that, and that will actually allow us to highlight that text and then generate the comment. So even if you haven't already highlighted something, you can just click and drag over it with one of these comments to attach the comment to that text. There's a voice typing option. So if you have a microphone, you can actually just click the microphone icon here. And this will actually take everything that you're saying through the microphone and allow that to be transcribed to this comment. And despite me being a bit of a motor mouth, it is able to pick up and follow along with what I am saying as I say it, which is quite cool. It's also able to support multiple languages. So after about 3 words, it detects what language you're speaking, and then it will start putting, if you're speaking, say, for example, Spanish, it'll put the accent markers over the vowels where it should be and put the Spanish spelling of the word in when it hears it. So that can be quite handy as a sort of bilingual use case as well. Now, you can also attach comments to anchor points. This can be useful when you have something like an image like this. Say if we want to have the students come in and label some countries on the map, I'm going to plot my homeland down here. In fact, I think I need to switch my audio back over. There we go. But yeah, now I can press enter and that will appear on this map. I can move it around as needed, but it's where it's supposed to be right now. So yeah, they're really good for labeling exercises with a number of different images. So you could use maps. You could also use diagrams if you're doing this in the context of a math or a science exercise. Yeah, quite a few different options for sort of using that content together. In addition to voice typing, there are also voice comments. So we can make a recording here, and that will just record an audio clip rather than transcribing the voice. So if you wanted to put some voice instructions in there, or if you wanted to get the student to put an audio comment down, one example of where audio comments from students can be really good is in language classes, where you might want them to sort of read aloud a particular phrase or sentence, and then you'll be able to listen back to that during the grading steps. When you do submit audio or video comments, it's probably a good idea, if you are putting these in as instructional content, just to put a text comment, just giving the students a little bit of context about where this fits into the exercise. So for example, we might put something like this in here because this particular clip relates to a specific question that we've asked in the text. And just note that you can put comment text in bold and italics. So that is useful for drawing attention to the text sometimes. Video comments. So the video comments, pretty straightforward. This is going to incorporate the webcam with the audio recording. So if you have like a whiteboard in your room and you need to just quickly show the students something, you can tilt your camera around, you can show that on the board. It is also able to record for up to 20 minutes. So we can go into quite a lot of detail if we want to. I find most teachers don't end up using the full 20 minutes, but there is no limit to the number of these clips that you can put into a document. So you could feasibly have a whole series of 5-minute explanations, throughout the document if you wanted. And my favorite option here is probably the screen capture comment, because the screen capture comment just has a lot of flexibility across different subject areas. And it can be really useful for things like, you can actually get a little bit sort of meta with this, where you can actually show the students how you would use the tools to approach a particular question. Like, for example, if you wanted them to use the markup tool in a specific way on a closed reading exercise, like, okay, we're going to use red for this type of question, we're going to use blue for this type of question, we're going to use green, etc. We might lay that all out in a screen recording and talk that through with the students, and actually show them an example of us doing that on the document, so that they have a good guide for how to proceed. Now, the example I'm going to show is just a 1-minute explanation of this physics problem that we did here. Just for reference, if you scroll to the end of any document, you will have this plus icon at the bottom here. That plus icon lets you add in additional blank pages or other page types as well. There are actually quite a few. But what I did is I added a blank page, and then I started recording my screen, and I used the drawing tool with a touchscreen and stylus in order to write out this problem and talk through the process there. So I'm just going to again switch my audio over. Apologies if there's a little drop in the audibility here. Let's see. Okay. All right. Okay, so we go in here with the drawing tool. I'm going to go ahead and write out this problem. Writing out the variables here. And there we go and actually add in what those variables are. So in this case, we're going to go 1 meter. So to work out the velocity for this, we just need to take our equation and substitute those variables. And then we just solve for those. So you now go 1/2. 1 will be 0.5 here. We'll just give -1 here because of that m/f. That's another way to express that. And that's our final answer. Okay, so hope you were able to hear that all right. Again, I'll switch back my audio back over. So, so that's the screen capture comment. You could really use that in combination with a whole bunch of different tools on the interface, and thoroughly recommend checking that out. So moving on next to the text boxes. So text boxes are pretty straightforward. If we click a space on the document, it's going to generate one of these. There's a little toolbar that sits at the top of the page that you can use to type in. Change the different options for the font size, line spacing. Line spacing can be an important one to note if your document has pre-filled lines. If you know what the line spacing is, then just set the text to match that, and that'll save you a lot of headaches. The other options, I'm imagining you guys are probably quite familiar with from using other word processing applications. We've kept things pretty similar to those options that you would see in things like Google Docs. The two that I would draw your attention to are the formula tool and the voice typing tool. So the formula tool is related to the math sort of equation side of things. I will circle back to that formula tool in a moment once we talk about the equation tool, because I find it makes sense to talk about the equation tool first and then the formula tool. But there's also the voice typing option I'd point out as well. So again, if you want to do voice transcription and you want to do it in a more long form space, that is a good option. Quite useful as an assistive technology for some students as well. So just a note about how text boxes work. Text boxes will not save unless they have something typed into them. So for example, and the reason we do this is because when you click the document, you will generate a text box. So if you haven't typed anything into it, we don't want to lead to the situation of you having created 50 different text boxes that you then have to go and delete. But if you want to have a blank text box, which is fillable by the student, so sometimes, if we've got a document like this that has pre-filled questions, we might want to create a pre-filled answer space for that so that students don't have to manually create a text box from scratch. So to do that, we just need to put a single space on the text box. And even though a space doesn't show up on the text here, it does count as a character, and thus it does allow us to save the page. So that is a little workaround if you do want to put these pre-filled forms in. Just insert them this way, and then when you push out the individual copies, the students will be able to click into that space and write out their answer. Okay, so I mentioned the equation tool, so I should probably elaborate on that. The equation tool is a specialized text box that has been made for writing out math problems. So to that end, we've got a number of different mathematical symbols in here. The main reason why we built this is because if you type in, let's just go ahead and up the size here. If I go ahead and try to write out a fraction problem, it's not so bad. This is kind of legible. If we're trying to write out a problem that has exponents in it, that gets even messier. This looks nothing like what the student would be actually seeing in the textbook. And then don't even get me started on square roots. That's not even a thing with regular text. So we've got, basically to that end, we've built a number of symbols in here that you'll be able to insert. For example, if you click a fraction icon, it's going to allow you to put in the numerator and denominator for that fraction. And then we can then write this problem out much more cleanly than with standard text. You can use keyboard shortcuts for this as well. So if I type 2/2 on the keyboard, then 1/1 and then 1, I can show all of the workings. So if you've got a problem like this where you can express all of the workings in a single equation box, then the equation tool is probably going to be the one to use in that case. However, it can get a little bit fiddly if you're adding text or equation boxes directly below one another, because you can kind of move them ever so slightly and then they get out of alignment and you kind of have to move them as a group. So to save that whole headache, instead what we do is we recommend using the formula tool inside of the text box. So the formula tool actually inserts an equation box inside of the text field. So then we have a space that we can type out each line of this problem. So for example, that physics example I was doing earlier, I can go ahead and make that appear here. And the nice thing is if we're including a text explanation alongside this, we can, alternate back and forth between formula text and standard text and adjust the size independently, which I really like. So you can put, written explanations if you were putting this in as an example for a student that go into a bit more detail about what your thought process is at each of those stages. Drawing tool, this is going to be pretty straightforward for those of you who have a touchscreen and stylus. You can just draw directly into the screen. I do not have a touchscreen and stylus, hence why my line looks pretty janky there. This is me just trying to draw with my trackpad. You can do that, but if the students don't have access to a touchscreen, I would recommend them instead rely on the Shapes tool more. So Shapes tool's got a number of different options. We can put in, for example, a rectangle. We can also hold down Shift with any of these shape options, and they've each got their own little options underneath it that give you some secondary functionality. So for example, with the rectangle, holding down Shift will make a perfect square. With the ellipse, holding down Shift will actually lock this to be a perfect circle. So that one's a good one to note if you want to have students circle something on the page, but they don't have a touchscreen and stylus. That would be my go-to. The triangle, that's actually going to give you the angles at each of the points. The angles don't stay on the page, I should say. So, once you've locked it in, they will disappear. If you are needed to draw a right angle triangle, you can hold down Shift, and then that will lock one of these angles to be at 90 degrees. There's also a line function. So for example, if we wanted to draw a straight line between these 2 points, we can. You can also, you can see that it also gives you the angle relative to this arc here. You can also hold down Shift. Holding down Shift locks this at a 22.5 degree increment. So basically we can draw right angle lines and 45 degree lines and the increments in between a little bit more easily. Yeah. And also just a note about the lines here. So with the line tool, if you hover over this, there is a little option which allows you to add in arrowheads if needed, or dotted lines. Just depending on if you're using these for diagrams, that can often be a good thing to note. Just to note that the eraser tool has 2 sub options, and this is related to what I was talking about earlier with drawing on top of images. So for example, if I wanted to delete both of these annotations here, if I wanted to go in, if I wanted to just delete this, if I've got the all annotations option selected, it's going to delete both the comment and also the image behind it, which is not ideal. So the reason why we have this drawings and shapes option in is if you've got something circled, you can delete just that layer of annotations without having to affect the image. And then if you want to remove the comment on its own, you can just press that little trash can icon up in the top right. Note about add media as well. We can bring in images and videos from a number of different sources. So you can bring, videos or images that you have saved on your local storage or Google Drive. So if you've already in the past used something like Screencastify to put together your own videos, you can actually bring those Screencastify videos into Kami as well. There is also a built-in Google image search, which is quite useful if you want to bring in images of various things that you may not have on hand. Slightly better map than that. Really? This is the best you got, Google? Give me that. So it'll take a second to load. It's missing the part of the country I am in, but we'll take it. You can also crop an image down after you've added it if needed. So yeah, that's quite a useful way to bring in additional images. We do also have a built-in YouTube integration along similar lines. So if you have a YouTube video that goes really nicely with your exercise, then you can go ahead and copy the link for that into this. So and then you just need to press this little green button here, and then that will load the thumbnail, and then you can pick the start time. So if it's a particularly long video, then you might have a specific start time in mind. So you just need to set that here, and then the video will automatically resume from that point. And then we can paste that onto the page, and then we've got an interactive video we have embedded. So one last thing to note under this heading is the stickers tool. We've added quite a bit to the stickers tool over the years. We've just recently released some new things like graphical organizers so that you can bring in things like Venn diagrams on the fly as needed, and also some feedback stickers as well for students. This is typically what you would use in the grading portion as a teacher. So we'll come to that shortly once the assignment is turned in. Okay, so last tool we're going to cover on the toolbar is the signature tool. You can use this to draw a signature on the document. You can also send a sharing link from your phone if you need to, if you don't have. Goodness, I just got caught by a rogue sneeze. Apologies for that. So you can send a sharing link to your phone. That'll allow you to use the touch screen there to sign off if you don't have one on your computer. So you shouldn't have to print off and rescan things to sign off on them if you've been doing that. Should hopefully save you some steps. So now that we're at the end of the toolbar, we're going to go ahead and turn in the assignment. So it just needs to do a redirect back to Schoology because the final submission process actually takes place in Schoology here. So this is the final part of the process where we just need to hit submit. It automatically embeds that link in there, which is how we access the file through the grading interface. And then we go back over to the teacher view, and we should have a reminder for this course. Here we are, submissions. And when you load this for the first time, you're going to see this load in Schoology's PDF viewer, which does, as I mentioned before, have some limitations. What you need to do is just click this Open with Kami button at the top here. And that checkbox, once you've selected it, will stay toggled on. And then you'll have access to all of those same Kami tools as part of the grading process. I often recommend, especially if you're using Kami early on and you've still got these descriptions toggled open, you can toggle these back to give yourself some additional space in the future. But you can also toggle the sidebar for the grading view, which will allow you to see the comments a little bit easier. So that's something I've found also helps. Now, we can use all of these tools that we've just been talking about to submit feedback to the students. One other thing we can do as well is we can actually save annotations that we have made ourselves. So we could take this comment here, and you see this little box icon beside the trash can. Basically, if you click that, it will ask you whether you want to add something to your annotation bank. So what is that annotation bank? Well, the annotation bank's located up here on the sidebar. And there are a few things under this heading. First is the overview of the document. This number, by the way, relates to the number of annotations on a particular page. So it gives you sort of a rough overview of where most of the activity on the document is. This other annotation summary will break down all of the annotations on the document and when they are made. If you want the exact time, you can hover over that time and it will give you the exact date and time it was put in. You can also click on any of these annotations and it will quickly navigate you to that part of the document. So that could be quite handy as well. Now, the annotation bank is the last option on this list. And basically what it is a folder. Or it's a bank, but you can put folders underneath it as well, of saved annotations that you might want to use during grading or elsewhere. So for example, I'm sure you guys probably have certain phrases that you use all the time, as sort of shorthand. You can have these be saved so that Kami actually automatically recommends what you've typed. So I'll show you so that you can get what I mean, because I don't think I'm being entirely concise here. But if I type, for example, like go to type, good, it's going to give me, it's going to try to match what I'm typing to all of the saved annotations that I have. So that can be really handy. Can definitely save you a little bit of time on each, student, which can really add up in the long run. So if there's any, from math, you might be saving a particular example equation, like the quadratic equation. That's something we can totally do as well. Cool. So I'm going to cover the split and merge tool, and then I'm going to open up for questions. So split and merge, just two ways to get to this interface. First is the easiest. If you already have a document open, you can just click the menu at the top, and then split and merge will be the first option you see. Whereas if you go to the main screen of Kami, which you can do by clicking the extension icon, that will have an option for split and merge just down here. So you just have to open that and then upload the resource. If you've already got the resource open, then it will sort of cut a step out of the process, because it's just taking your file and then bringing it straight in to split and merge. So what split and merge does is it allows us to modify documents on a page-by-page level. So for example, I can take this resource here. Let's say this resource contains some pages that we want to remove, but maybe not delete. So for example, like a real classic example of this is like an answer sheet at the end of a resource. There's heaps of times where they'll just append the full answer sheet onto the end of the document. So if we wanted to retain that answer sheet for later on, but not have that go out on the student's copy, we can take those pages that make up the answer sheet and drag them to the row below.
On the bottom left.
Now you can think of each one of these rows as representing a different file that you can generate. Now we don't delete, well, we don't actually modify the original file that you bring in. So it will require that you export both of these files in order to have these changes reflected. But there is also an export all button as well. So now that I've broken up this document, I could just hit export all, and then I can push that through to a specific folder in my Google Drive where I keep my resources, my answer keys, and then we can mix and match those and push them out to assignments later. So splitting up the document is really easy, but as the name suggests, you can also merge in pages from other documents as well. And what's nice here is these don't have to be other PDF resources necessarily. So you could totally bring in other PDF pages. But if you, for example, have put together a custom slide in a slide deck and you want to incorporate that into this exercise, or you've put together a title page, which is a Google Doc, you can bring those documents in, and Kami will automatically handle the conversion and allow you to mix and match between those in the interface. So now that I've uploaded this Google Doc, if I go back to the file, in the bottommost row, we've now got the pages of that Google Doc, which can now be incorporated with this original resource. And then we can rearrange the pages. We can duplicate pages as well if you need to duplicate the same page out. And you can also delete pages as well using that trash can icon. And then once you export, you'll have those changes reflected on a new copy. And that is everything that I was going to cover today, guys. I'll stop sharing my screen. So I know we've kind of blitzed through a lot of stuff there. So let's open up for questions. Does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff? Feel free to unmute and let me know.
I don't personally have any questions. I think you covered everything really well. There were some really cool features that I'm really glad that I got to see. So thanks.
Awesome. I'm glad. And it will also put the support email in the chat as well, just in case you guys have individual questions that come up after this session, just so you can reach out to us. Yeah, it's you can do. I've seen people do some quite interesting things with the voice and video comments over the years. Like one of the examples I saw that I really liked was a special ed instructor who worked with students who had hearing impairments, and she would be just signing in her in her video comments, and that was the primary way that she'd lay out the instruction. She'd take all the instructions and just parcel them out that way, which is awesome. But yeah, things like that, and that's what's funny is we never really anticipated stuff like that when we built the video tool originally. It really took people playing around with and experimenting with different use cases for like us to figure out that that was possible. So I definitely encourage you guys to just try out the tools with your class, and you guys might discover use cases that we didn't cover here today, and we'd love to hear about that. It's kind of how we make these presentations better for other teachers as well. So yeah, no, definitely I thoroughly recommend having a play with these tools at the conclusion of the session.
Christina and Darlene, do you guys have any questions?
Nope, I'm just so excited that we actually have the program now. I know during COVID, we didn't have the full program. So now that we have all the features, I'm so excited. Like, I'm not as worried about read and write anymore now. I didn't realize that it had
read aloud. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Kelly and I are special ed teachers. So that's like
cool.
a super cool feature for us. We're excited about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, and things like voice typing as well might be useful to note for like assistive technology and things like that. I've definitely seen a lot of SPED instructors make good use of that.
And I love the tip that you gave us with the text box, and you do a little space, because that's considered a character, because a lot of my students have a hard time with the whole text box thing. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's one that I've played around with, and yeah, I think that definitely will cut a number of steps out of the students getting started for sure, which is often the biggest barrier to entry, I find. Once they've made their first couple of annotations, they're usually off to the races. But yeah.
Thank you so much.
No problem. My pleasure.
I'm a speech and language pathologist, so I'm looking at this through a totally different lens, I guess. And anything about technology just really can open up ways to even connect with the parents, and like with the videos and stuff. I think that's really cool. You can show the parent on a video.
Yeah, totally.
Children working on certain sounds or strategies or whatever. It's cool. There's so much potential with all this stuff. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, and even something as simple as an IEP, like getting a parent to sign off on something like that. Like, that is something you could send out, get them to use the signature tool, and they can pop that in there without having to print it out and deal with the snail mail and all that. So yeah.
I've even had teachers like fill out their referral forms. They'll take my original that I email them and fill it out in Cami and then email it back to me. So that's cool too.
Nice.
How cool is that? I'm so excited about that.
Yes. So taking care of all these little pieces of paper that are always getting lost or shuffled around. So
yeah, and I will say that there is a new version of the Schoology feature coming down the line that will add some additional functionality that's probably going to be of interest to you guys. The one I'm thinking of most is the ability to control what tools the students see for their assignment. So it's something we haven't been able to build for the Schoology integration just yet, but the idea is that when you are the teacher, you'll have a button you can press and it'll give you a number of check boxes, and you can say, well, I want the student to have access to I don't want the student to have access on the dictionary on this assignment because I'm going to be testing their knowledge of these terms, but I want them to have access to the dictionary tool on this next assignment, and maybe we'll disable this other tool that's not going to be relevant in that case. And that is coming down the line very soon.
That's great.
No worries. Awesome,
all
guys.
Right. Well, yeah. So Aiden, whenever you get a chance, just send me the recording link, and I will share with. There's at least 6 people that wanted to watch
Definitely.
it. So
I have to watch some of that over.
No problem. I'll send that through to you guys. And it takes a little minute for it to download and convert to my computer,
Sure.
but I'll be able to send it to you probably about 15 minutes after this call.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you so much. Yes.
All right, guys. Well, have a great day, or enjoy the rest of your evening. And yeah, if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to us on support. If you want to speak to me specifically, just say, hey, I had a PD with Aiden. I got a question about this, and they know who I am. They'll pass it along.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you
Have a
so
great
much.
night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
You too,
Thanks,
guys,
Jen,
and
for
happy
setting me
birthday.
up.
Oh,
Yes.
I think she's gone already.
Yeah,
You
Corey's gone.
Corey's
Yeah.
gone. Yeah, I hope she has a good one though.
All right.
All right.
Bye, Aiden.
See ya. Have a good one, Jennifer.